The Varkuth Empire stood as a symbol of power across the galaxy. Their warriors, brutal and disciplined, were feared by every civilization that dared cross their path. Among them, Commander Talon was the finest, a warrior whose name alone brought terror. In the halls of the Galactic Council, where diplomacy and restraint reigned, Talon was an oddity. His belief in the supremacy of his race over all others, especially humanity, was no secret. At one such assembly, Talon's voice echoed across the chamber. His disdain was palpable as he ridiculed the Earth's Sentinels, calling them nothing more than diplomats hiding behind a military title. "They are not warriors," he sneered. "They are caretakers of colonies, humans, content with maintaining peace because they lack the strength for war." For the Varkuth, strength was the ultimate measure of worth, and Talon had no respect for a species that had yet to prove itself on the battlefield. His taunts were deliberate, calculated, meant to provoke. The Earth's Sentinels remained silent, a strategic move that Talon mistook for cowardice. The galaxy watched, most siding with the mighty Varkuth Empire, while Earth was quietly dismissed as unworthy of a seat at the table. The Earth's Sentinels were, in fact, an efficient peacekeeping force, though their public role was to maintain balance in remote colonies. To the galaxy at large, they appeared non-combative, their presence designed more for diplomacy than military might. And that's how they were seen, noble, disciplined, yet untested in real war. Talon continued his barrage of insults, this time questioning humanity's very place on the Galactic Council. He mocked the Sentinels' ability to protect the colonies under their jurisdiction, hinting that another species might better serve in their role. His words were harsh, and many around the Council seemed to agree with him. Earth, despite its technological advances, was still viewed as an outsider, a backwater world among ancient galactic empires. But behind the scenes, Earth's Council held its tongue for a reason. Humanity knew what the galaxy did not, that the Sentinels were just one face of Earth's defense. Their hidden strength lay in forces few had seen, and fewer still could understand. Yet Talon's provocations demanded a response. He was offering a challenge, one that the galaxy would be watching closely. Humanity could not risk revealing its true hand too soon. As Talon grew impatient, he decided to force their hand. His forces, elite and unchallenged, descended upon a series of human colonies located on the edge of Varkuth-controlled space. The raids were swift, merciless. Small outposts and trade stations were obliterated within moments, and the few defenders that did resist were quickly overwhelmed. Each attack was broadcast across the galaxy, with Talon ensuring that the Sentinels' inability to protect their own people was on full display. To him, it was a game, proof that his earlier taunts were true. The humans, weak and indecisive, were incapable of protecting even the smallest of their settlements. "Is this the best Earth can offer?" Talon scoffed to his comrades as another colony fell. The images of destruction served only to solidify his belief that Earth was unworthy. And yet humanity did not respond. The Sentinels remained curiously inactive, as if unwilling to escalate the situation. It was a move that most of the galaxy saw as cowardice, but for those who knew Earth's deeper plans, it was anything but. For Talon, this silence was a sign of submission, proof that humanity had accepted its inferiority. But he was wrong. Earth's Council was not idle. They were watching closely, assessing Talon's tactics, and biding their time. The truth was that Earth had a response ready, a force that was designed not for show, but for precision. Hidden from the galaxy, even from the Sentinels, was Earth's true ace in the hole, the Shadow Assassins. Genetically enhanced and trained for lethal combat, they operated in silence, striking in the shadows where no one could see. When Talon's raids escalated, Earth's Council knew it was time to act. The Shadow Assassins were deployed, their mission simple: neutralize the threat, expose Talon's arrogance, and remind the galaxy why humanity was not to be underestimated. Talon, blinded by his own hubris, had no idea what was coming. The Earth's Shadow Assassins, a force shrouded in secrecy, existed in the shadows of human defense. Trained in a realm beyond ordinary military tactics, they were masters of stealth, psychological warfare, and silent, lethal combat. Each member was genetically enhanced, their bodies fine-tuned for speed, strength, and precision. Augmented with advanced cybernetic implants, they could outthink, outmaneuver, and outfight any conventional soldier. Cloaked in silence, they struck with lethal efficiency, leaving no trace behind. The assassins operated under a strict code. They had no need for glory or recognition. Their actions were surgical, designed to end threats without fanfare. While the Sentinels stood as Earth's public shield, the assassins thrived in the darkness, unseen and unknown. Their missions were approved only by Earth's highest command, and only when no other options remained. When it came to neutralizing targets that traditional forces could not touch, the shadow assassins were deployed. The galaxy didn't know their name, but their presence was felt in the cold fear that followed their work. With Talon's attacks escalating, the Council knew this was a situation that called for the assassins. The Sentinels' visible presence would only embolden Talon further, so instead, the decision was made to strike in silence. A small team of assassins was dispatched to Talon's base at the edge of Varkuth-controlled space. Moving like ghosts, they slipped past the Varkutha's formidable defenses, equipped with cloaking technology that made them invisible to all known detection methods. Talon's arrogance blinded him. Even as the assassins infiltrated his operations, he continued to broadcast his derision of Earth across the galaxy, unaware of the invisible threat closing in. The assassins observed Talon's operations from the shadows, analyzing his command structure, locating weaknesses, and preparing to strike with precision. Their mission was not to wage war but to destabilize Talon's forces from within. Disruption, not destruction, was the key. They identified key supply routes, communication lines, and critical officers within Talon's command, knowing that with a few calculated moves, they could cripple his entire operation. The first strike came swiftly. In a single night, Talon's supply lines were cut. Resources that were vital for maintaining his fleet's strength simply vanished. More crucially, several of his highest-ranking officers disappeared without a trace. His base, fortified and seemingly impenetrable, showed no signs of any external breach. Talon, confused and frustrated, couldn't comprehend what had happened. His immediate reaction was to blame his own officers, believing their incompetence or cowardice had led to the losses. Talon's arrogance still blinded him to the truth. The idea that Earth had deployed a force so dangerous, so precise, was beyond his imagination. He saw humans as weak, incapable of such a coordinated attack. His response was to double down on his taunts, mocking humanity's perceived incompetence. But the losses continued, one by one, as his command structure unraveled before him. The galaxy, once entertained by Talon's raids, began to take notice of the sudden shift. Whispers of failure began circulating, though Talon stubbornly dismissed them as rumors, convinced that no human force could ever best him. But those whispers were grounded in the reality he refused to face. The assassins were already embedded deep within his operations, dismantling his empire from within. Each loss was carefully calculated, each strike part of a larger plan to expose his weaknesses. Talon's overconfidence was his undoing, and while he laughed at the Sentinels, he failed to see the real threat lurking just out of sight, preparing to bring his reign to an abrupt end. Talon's once unshakable confidence was beginning to erode. The disappearances of his key officers, the unexplained sabotage of his supply lines, these were not mere accidents. His scouts returned with reports of strange events, soldiers vanishing in the night, outposts found deserted without a trace of struggle. His fleet, once a symbol of the Varkuth Empire's might, was suddenly riddled with vulnerabilities. The impenetrable armor that had shielded his forces was now full of gaps, as if something had been silently picking them apart from within. At first, Talon refused to entertain the idea that this was anything more than bad luck or incompetence. His arrogance shielded him from the truth for longer than it should have. But as the evidence mounted, his belief that the humans were too weak to pose a real threat started to crack. The possibility that an unseen force, something beyond his understanding, was systematically hunting him down began to gnaw at his mind. He couldn't bring himself to fully accept that these precision strikes were the work of humans. It was too implausible, too contrary to everything he believed about Earth's place in the galaxy. Still, he tightened security around his operations. Patrols were doubled, surveillance intensified, but nothing could stop the invisible hand that was dismantling his forces piece by piece. No alarms were triggered. No trails were left behind. The assassins moved with an efficiency that defied all his defenses, continuing to strike with unrelenting precision. Each hit was methodical, another step in weakening the foundations of his once mighty fleet. Then the psychological attacks began. The assassins were no longer content with simple sabotage. They wanted to break Talon's spirit. They started planting false information in his communication channels, leading his forces to make costly mistakes. Messages were intercepted, commands misdirected, causing confusion among his ranks. Entire squadrons were sent on wild chases, only to find empty space waiting for them. And all the while, the assassins remained unseen, operating in the shadows, just beyond reach. Panic began to spread. Talon's once disciplined and fearsome warriors were now questioning every shadow, every silent moment. The once confident Varka soldiers started to doubt their own safety, no longer sure if they would make it through the night. Paranoia took root, and whispers of invincible ghosts began circulating among the troops. Talon struggled to maintain order, but he could feel the fear creeping into his own thoughts. He tried to rally his forces, launching counterattacks in every direction, desperate to flush out the enemy. But each effort failed. The assassins were too elusive, too precise. They left no trace of their presence, only the destruction in their wake. Talon, who had once relished in mocking Earth and its sentinels, now found himself haunted by their unseen power. His confidence, once his greatest weapon, was now turning into his downfall. The mighty warrior who had scoffed at humanity's strength was now a shell of his former self, isolated in his paranoia. Every decision he made felt compromised, every step watched. The galaxy that had cheered for him just weeks ago now watched in stunned silence, as Talon's downfall played out in real time. The final blow came without warning. The assassins had been systematically weakening Talon's fleet, and now they turned their full attention to his command ship. In a swift, coordinated strike, they crippled the vessel's core systems, leaving Talon and his remaining forces vulnerable. With his communications jammed and his escape routes cut off, Talon found himself completely at the mercy of the assassins. For the first time, he understood the scope of what he was facing. The Sentinels had been a distraction all along, a mask for Earth's true power hidden in the shadows. In a desperate final stand, Talon tried to rally his remaining forces, but his attempts were futile. His once formidable skills as a warrior meant nothing against the invisible, lethal precision of the assassins. There was no face to confront, no opponent to fight. It was as though the very darkness had turned against him. His weapons, his strength, his pride, none of it mattered now. The assassins struck from every angle, each blow calculated to dismantle his defenses with surgical precision. Talon's fall was swift, and with it, the final chapter of his campaign against humanity was written. The galaxy, which had once viewed Earth with skepticism, now watched in awe. Earth's strength had been underestimated, but no longer. The legend of Talon, the mighty Varkath warrior, was reduced to a cautionary tale. The true power of humanity lay not in their sentinels, but in the shadows, where the assassins moved unseen and unstoppable. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Talon's defeat sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Word of the Varkath commander's downfall spread faster than anyone could have anticipated, shattering the image of invincibility that had once surrounded him. The warrior who had once been a symbol of unmatched strength and arrogance was now a symbol of failure, a cautionary tale whispered across distant worlds. News outlets across various species and planets eagerly shared the story, each detailing how a once dominant warrior had been outwitted and outmatched by forces he had mocked. For many, it was unthinkable that the mighty Varkath Empire had been humbled by Earth, a planet they had long dismissed as inferior. The shock of Talon's loss forced other species to reevaluate their perceptions of humanity. They had underestimated the humans, viewing them as diplomats and peacekeepers, never as a legitimate military threat. But Talon's defeat at the hands of Earth's shadow assassins revealed a depth of power they hadn't anticipated. The Sentinels, once seen as weak and non-combative, were now recognized as a stabilizing force in the galaxy. Backed by the lethal precision of the assassins, their role in maintaining galactic order took on new significance. In the corridors of power, discussions turned to Earth with a newfound respect and a hint of fear. Species that had once ignored humanity's warnings now paid close attention, realizing that beneath the surface, there was a hidden strength, a force capable of toppling even the most fearsome warriors. The arrogance that had blinded Talon was now a warning to others. Earth was not to be trifled with. Their peacekeepers were not just guardians of diplomacy but protectors of a darker, more dangerous secret. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. Earth's representatives, flanked by the Sentinels, stood with quiet confidence. While Talon's defeat was still fresh in everyone's minds, the humans did not gloat. They didn't need to. The results spoke for themselves. The Sentinels hinted at the power of the assassins but remained careful not to reveal too much. They understood the importance of maintaining the mystery surrounding their covert operatives. The Council members, keenly aware of how little they knew about the true extent of Earth's military capabilities, pressed for more information, but Earth's representatives were unyielding. In that session, Earth's standing within the Galactic Council was forever changed. No longer viewed as a marginal player, humanity had earned its place as a key power. The Council, which had once debated Earth's inclusion, now recognized their critical role in maintaining galactic stability. With the shadow assassins lurking in the background, other species began to tread more carefully in their dealings with humanity. There was a fragile peace now, upheld not just by Earth's diplomacy but by the unspoken threat of what could happen if that peace were ever broken. Talon's name, once synonymous with Varkath's strength, became a story of hubris and downfall. The Varkath Empire, humiliated by their defeat, withdrew from their aggressive campaigns, taking time to rebuild and reassess their position in the galaxy. Their once proud warriors, who had reveled in the glory of conquest, were forced to confront the limits of their strength. Talon's legacy was no longer one of victory but of reckless arrogance, a warning to those who might follow in his footsteps. His story became a lesson in the dangers of underestimating one's enemies. The Varkath, once a symbol of galactic dominance, were now seen as vulnerable, licking their wounds after a defeat they hadn't expected. Meanwhile, Earth, once viewed as a backwater planet on the fringes of the galaxy, had risen in the eyes of many. Their victory over Talon wasn't just a military success, it was a strategic, calculated triumph that showcased their adaptability, intelligence, and willingness to fight when pushed. As the galaxy moved on from the shock of Talon's defeat, the Shadow Assassins returned to their place in the shadows. Their mission was complete, but they knew their work was far from over. The galaxy was vast, full of threats and challenges that would require their unique skills. For now, they remained unseen, waiting for the next call to action. Earth's Sentinels would continue to serve as the face of humanity's defense, but the assassins would be the silent blade, ready to strike when necessary. Humanity's ascent as a power in the galaxy was just beginning. With their Sentinels keeping the peace and their assassins ensuring security from the shadows, Earth was now a force that could not be ignored. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson: underestimating humanity came at a cost. The Sentinels, once mocked and dismissed, stood proudly as protectors of Earth's interests, backed by a power far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The assassins, their work done for now, faded into the darkness once more, awaiting the next time they would be called upon to defend their home. In the aftermath of Talon's defeat, the galaxy was a different place. And Earth, with its newly solidified position on the Galactic Council, was more than ready to meet the challenges that lay ahead. The era of dismissing humanity was over. The Shadow Assassins ensured that no one would forget Earth's hidden might.